My name is Matt Adams. I'm an artist and I'm one of the founders of Blast Theory.
My name's Atif and I'm the co-founder of Zaytoon, CIC, and Diversity and Ability.
Public art for me is about art for the community. It's a contribution to the community. It's something that is created to create a sense of place, and it's something that people can be brought together around. And the best public art is about the process in which it's made, so that there's engagement from the community in the making of it. People feel a connection to it and have some sort of response to it.
Yeah, that would make a lot of sense to me as well. I'd agree with that. The challenge there is to go to the intent behind the public art. And I don't know whether that's more important than the public art per se that you've created, but the intent matters because it's about that narrative of inclusion and belonging.
Also, it doesn't mean being led by popular opinion. So that there's this balance between creating something original, surprising, something that might even be provocative, and at the same time thinking carefully about who it's for, the place in which it's being made, and how the people who are going to experience that work are going to connect to it. And there's a balance that you need to get there, because otherwise, if you go too far one way, you create sort of things that are just trying to please people. And it's not too hard to imagine, things with smiles and rainbows that are inherently positive, but that's not necessarily the most interesting form of public art, because it doesn't take people somewhere that they weren't otherwise going.
It's a challenge as to, because the community isn't a homogenous identity, is it? And it never can be. It's made up of so many experiences and values and conflicts. It's perpetually reinventing what it is.
Art is often a thing for bringing disparate people together who wouldn't otherwise have a reason to talk to one another, and that can be a really exciting thing. But I also think there's an issue about equity and political change, and I wonder what you feel about that aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, I have some real concerns, I suppose. There's no shortage of people wanting to do good. There's no shortage of people capable of doing good. But there is a shortage of people who want to do that good, to access that good. And that has to be talked about. Why is it so tough for people who have got talent and crave a chance to exercise it, finding it so hard to get their stuff seen? And how is it so hard for folks who live in those spaces to make their work and their contribution seen in the public spaces in which they live?
Yeah. And I think because Brighton Hove is a place that prides itself on being a creative city, and to do that at an international level, as a city, we should be leading internationally in terms of how we do these things. We should aspire to absolute excellence, to breaking new grounds, to being a place that others look to for the quality of the public art that happens here.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's so easily, it's a little bit of alchemy on the table that can take this lead to gold, but it isn't going to take much. But it does need to get to the sincerity of it. And I know that often gets talked about a lot, but it's not talked enough, I think, in terms of policymakers being humbled by lived experiences.
The language you use is very powerful, and when we were working in Hull during the City of Culture up there, I was introduced to the idea that instead of thinking about people as hard to reach, you think of them as easy to ignore. And I found that a very important idea for switching my head around how there are people who you need to think about how you bring them in. It's not that you can't get to them, it's just that you can easily move past them without realizing it.
Well, look, Brighton Hove has had a Bangladeshi community since the late 50s. I talk on that, and people say, "Wow, really? Like, yeah, really." And so when you think, and I sit on the Brighton Hove Fair Trade Committee, And I'm really proud to be in it. I truly believe in the connections of trade justice and that its values are universal, you know. But I don't see brown folks too excited by fair trade in general, or even Brighton Hove. But you'd have a tough time trying to tell me that people don't care about trade justice in their ancestral homes. So we've got a mismatch. Then I do a lot of work, as you know, run a social enterprise in Brighton. And when I think about some of the things that happen in gatherings and business gatherings and say the Chamber of Commerce, you won't really see brown folks there. And you're going to have a tough time trying to tell me that brown folks don't want to work in businesses or don't set them up. And so we have got a space where we're perpetually moving things on, thinking that we are engaging, but not realizing why we're leaving folks behind, you know, and why they feel these invitations don't belong with them, you know. And that's tough work to do, you know, and it has to have a measurement to say, okay, what's happened here that says historically this doesn't feel like a safe place for us to participate in, and why is that? And for me, that's definitely a class discussion rather than a colour one. So, what is placemaking? I don't know what that is.
It's become a very fashionable word in art and culture worlds because it talks about how places are made welcoming and enjoyable to be in, especially if you're building a new housing estate, for example. What is it that makes it a place where people actually want to live, they enjoy being there, they have a sense of identity to that place? And there's an increasing realization that art has a real role to play. It's a big part of why we like to be here rather than somewhere else. Our identity about our place is bound up in that. So public art in particular is about paying a very close attention to this exact place and the people here.
So, I mean, uniquely you could identify it as a microculture of the town or the place you live in? Okay, and I get for that to be workable, that has to be responsive, it has to be agile, it has to be responsive for people who live there to have the very safety and agency that we're marketing, I guess, and people are all trying to market that as a commodity. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, as long as it's sincere in understanding that people who live in those spaces are doing free consultancy. They're doing free shape changing to that placemaking, you know? The challenge really is about whether or not people have safety and belonging to where they live. And I say this as a person that truly did at a time. As I said, where I grew up, it really doesn't matter. What matters is that it's your space and it's your interaction.